So this is our lifeline, intuition. It's that wisdom from the larger world than the one that we live in. There once was a little family, and the mother's tradition was to have a plate of cookies and milk for the children when they got home from school, like a little midday snack. And when the boys got in, they saw that there was only one favorite cookie on the plate, and of course they each wanted it. And the mother said, "What would Jesus do if he was here?" And the boys go, "I don't know." And she said, "Jesus would offer the plate first to his brother." And they thought a while, and the oldest one said, "You get to be Jesus Christ," to the younger brother. I don't think this has anything to do with intuition. It just has to do with the uncanniness of children knowing how to get what they want. The subject of intuition is an absolute lifeline for us. We need to risk it. And my housemate Carol and I have been having some interesting, those little everyday occurrences of intuition. It's the little small, almost silent voice within that tells you something. Nothing profound, but it's the beginnings of listening inwardly. So the other day, I shared with her that I was up at the cafe I like to go to. And right now in my life, I have a habit of leaving things behind. Hats, gloves, scarves, the whole deal. So I have such a wonderful collection of single gloves. So now I'm wearing, one of each. But this particular day, I left, and that voice said, "Check," because I saw I only had one, right? Oh, here we go again. "Check back inside." I go, "Nah, I'm going to keep going." Check back inside. No. Finally, I go, okay. I went back. The young man sitting in the seat where I was had taken the glove and put it right where someone could see it. So that was actually very interesting to me. And Carol, the other day, last Sunday, we had this wonderful cake, this wonderful chocolate cake for Padma, big one. And so at the end of the event in the yoga hall, Carol was suggesting, or maybe, I don't know how the whole thing came up, but the whole thing came up that it was Narada Lee's birthday the next day at the farm. And so, hey, take the remainder of the cake. And so she carefully helped Bhima pack it up and put it in a smaller box and make it safe for the travel to the farm. And then later in the afternoon, we saw Bhima pull up and, check with someone about something else perhaps. And Carol said she got this really strong thought, I should remind Bhima about the cake. And then she countered it immediately by saying, well, that would kind of embarrass him. He's a smart guy. He'll remember the cake. He drove off without the cake. I don't know what finally happened to the cake. But anyway, we were discussing these kinds of things. But, that's where it starts. So I want to suggest to you, listen to that voice and just go do it, even though it seems, maybe not. Just do it. And I'm sure Bhima would have been very happy to have gotten the reminder. So this, as I said, this is our lifeline, intuition. It's that wisdom from the larger world than the one that we live in. It's that hint as it starts out that something else is going on here, that we're connected in ways that we had no idea that we were. I'm right now reading the most amazing book, really. I mean, I've been reading all my life, and I've read a lot of wonderful books, but this is, once again, one of those experiences. And the book is called All the Beauty in the World. The subtitle is The Metropolitan Museum of Art and Me. And the story is about a young man, and he had an older brother whom he adored. And he was now in his first career as a writer for the New Yorker magazine. A very nice job to have out of college. And his older brother got cancer. And this young man spent much, much time with him and took him through the whole process. And it absolutely broke his heart when his brother died. And I'm thinking, because I haven't gotten to that part of the book, but I'm thinking that what happened was there was some opening, spiritual awakening that happened at the deathbed that changed this young man in profound ways. Because what he thought of was to drop his job at the New Yorker magazine and go to the Metropolitan Museum of Art and sign up to be a guard. And what he experienced, now the book is fat and I'm only that way through, but there's wonderful reviews of it. He experienced the consciousness raising and healing power of great art. And this is very exciting to me that there is this testimony, because this is one of the big ideas in Swami's book, Art as a Hidden Message. Now, there are several of us who've been studying that book for years, and it is very, very challenging. I'm seeing Robin smile there. We're working at it. Another round. But it's such important material, and we're working very hard to get our minds around it. But here's testimony from an individual who's been newly awakened of the healing and spiritually uplifting power of great art. And so I'm just starting in on that journey. I've just stepped into that museum with him. Just the little backstory is his mother, from a very young age, would take the boys to museums. And so they were familiar with that kind of inner communication. Anyway, I'm looking forward to this. I got so excited about the book, I sent an email to my older sister. She's a bookie and a librarian. And I said, I found this wonderful book. I think you'll really like it. She said, oh, I gave that to my husband for our 60th wedding anniversary and for Valentine's Day, and he's halfway through it and says it's very insightful and quite moving. So there it was. We were all in this together. It's a very nice family experience there. So I want to say a few things about this subject. Intuition is a pathway to great nourishment spiritually. It offers us an understanding beyond the tight hold that the values of this world have on our minds. It opens us up to an understanding that there really is something else going on here. And it would behoove us to take seriously the understanding that it's a very central part of the spiritual path. Asha Praver, who's a minister at Ananda Palo Alto, told a story once where she was teaching classes on intuition, how to develop it and how to work with it, because you sometimes will get an understanding that isn't quite clear, and you have to just start to make the move toward it and then see where it's going to take you. It's kind of a path. Intuition is a path where you are constantly listening. And so Asha was teaching this course for years, and she got very frustrated with it. She really didn't feel like she knew how to get it all across to people. And Swami said, you mustn't drop that course. You must persist, because it's the centerpiece. It's the centerpiece of our lives as devotees. And you know, intuition is also evident in other aspects, not just ourselves, but in nature, in animals. Swamiji tells the story of this family who had to move from the Midwest to California, and they just couldn't take the cat. They couldn't figure out how in the world they were going to manage it at all. So they took this cat to the neighbor and dropped it off and took off on their journey. 4 months later, the cat appeared on their front doorstep in their new home. Okay, so Swami is very funny with this story, because he said, now you can't just tell me that it's not intuition, that this cat was sniffing his way. You know, can you see him sniffing across a highway? Come on. That cat loved his family, longed for his family. His heart was open, and he just knew how to get the message. I mean, I find that amazing. I don't know how to even think about it, because it's so very pleasing and loving. Bharat Cornell, who is the world-famous naturalist and a devotee, lives at the village, tells a lovely story, not to do with nature, but to do with another aspect of intuition. I'll tell you some of his nature stories, but in this one, I want to actually read it to you. I don't know when this book came out. It's called Listening to Nature. It's really all about intuition. It's quite a wonderful book. But this is a different kind of a story, and I'm suggesting it because it clearly visualizes what intuition is like when it comes to us. This chapter is called "You Can't Learn Anything When You're Talking." Jobs were scarce during worldwide depression in the 1930s. In a small Midwest town in the United States, the telegraph office announced they were hiring a new telegraph operator. On the day of the interview, 60 hopeful men packed the waiting room. To relieve their tension, most of the job applicants joked, chattered loudly to one another. One man, however, sat quietly alone near the office door. Suddenly, the quiet man stood up, walked into the office. A few minutes later, the office manager came to the door and announced, "Thank you all for coming today. We have hired someone for the job." Why was the quiet man hired? What had happened was he was sitting quietly, and he heard the boss in the office tapping out a Morse code specifically to him. He was the only one that heard it. It said, "If you hear this, come in, we'll hire you for the job." And that's intuition. It speaks very quietly at first. It's not going to drag you along. And Bharat tells another story to show that other creatures have this quality, and it's something that we're given in order to help us make transitions to larger realities, which is what we desperately need. We need to know this picture is much bigger than it seems. So this has to do with Bharat sitting out one day in the fields, and he was writing a book on Om, which we have downstairs, by the way, and he was outside doing the Om, sounding the Om, constantly sitting in this field. And he noticed off to the side a coyote who was just watching, just staying right there. Bharat just kept going. And then the coyote came and stood right in front of him and listened again to 3 or 4 more ohms, and then went on its way. It's incredible communication goes on there, incredible communication. And I think I've shared this story before, but Mari, who is one of the ministers in Portland, Ananda, tells the story of her study of, or understanding of the power of Om, and wishing very much to saturate her system with the Om vibration, which represents the vibration of all creation, the biggest picture that we live in. So she was working on this, and one day she walked into the bank, and bank robbers came in at gunpoint and told everyone to get down on the floor. And she was hoping she would not be afraid, but she was terrified. And she was as terrified on the floor as everyone else, so she couldn't give the help she was hoping to give. And then, mind you, this just doesn't happen except if God has a hand in it. 3 months later, she was in the bank, and bank robbers came in at gunpoint. How could that be? That was all for Mari. And that time, she stayed calm. She had allowed the Om sound to penetrate, and she stayed calm. She crawled along the floor and helped other people to calm down, because that's what was needed when you're in this kind of situation. And everyone was absolutely surprised. They couldn't understand how she could do that. Well, that's tapping into the same thing. The Om vibration carries the intuition. I mean, that's one way of saying it. And we need to be open to that help, that great aid. Well, it's as I said in the beginning, it is the lifeline. And it attunes us to our great masters, it attunes us to our guru. It's the whole, it's like a circle in the chakras. It's the heart, and then referring to the spiritual eye, and then into the heart, because the intuition is a heart quality, and the heart knows. It knows in many, many different situations. Well, it's actually, and I'm becoming more and more aware of this. I'm starting to go home after church and study the chants that we've done in Sunday service. Because if you go deeply into those words, sometimes they don't make any sense. I am the sky, mother, I am the sky. What are we talking about here? We're talking about a deeper reality. So studying the chants, the chant book is like an intuition booklet. It's all set up for us to be able to receive an understanding of what this quality is and how it can guide us. Albert Schweitzer, he was a very unusual man, and he was talked about a lot in the 50s and 60s. You don't hear people referring to him much anymore. He did a lot of different things. He was like a Renaissance man. But the thing that Americans tuned into was his wonderful work for the people of Africa. He became a medical doctor in order to help the folks in Africa. And he set up a clinic and did a lot of good work in those early 50s. And he once said, he used the term reverence for life. As we acquire more knowledge, things do not become more comprehensible, but more mysterious. And we like to make a dichotomy between science and religion, that one kind of knowing and another kind of knowing. But we all can see that science is coming to the frontier of realizing that some divine intelligence must have put this together, because it all disappears into something else. So I think we're all at that place that Albert Schweitzer was alluding to, that even using reason, even using scientific method, where we get to is the mysterious. And then I've read a wonderful book on George Washington Carver, and I recommend it to everyone. Catherine, what's it called? I lent the book to you. Maybe it's just called George Washington Carver. Anyway, and he was extremely intuitive about relating to nature. He talked to the plants. He loved the soil. He loved his work for God in that way. And when he was very small, his older brother Jim saw him cultivating some yellow roses and said, "What are you doing to those flowers?" And he says, "Loving them." Thank you. Life is